members. Uh, and again, we are live on Channel 23 on cable, on YouTube, and Facebook legislative page. This afternoon is a continuation of Senate's PUTC committee information or hearing on Commonwealth Utilities Corporation. And this afternoon, we are back from recess and we're covering number 2 on the agenda, power generation / distribution plans for the districts of Saipan and the island of Tinen and Luta and Rota. And before we took break for lunch, Executive Director Watson presented a PowerPoint presentation on the subject item, of which now we are on the Q&A. So at this time, the chair recognizes any member who wishes to post a question with regards to the presentation that was made earlier by Director Watson. Senator Corina Magofnia, I recognize.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Director and members who are still here. Thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. I only have a couple of questions. So on page 6 of the slide on renewable energy projects, it talks about the 20 megawatt solar design project status, right? And so my first question is the design on track to be completed and submitted to CUC by April 14th, or are there any delays that you know of?
It is on track to be completed by the end of April.
Okay, great. And then my next question is, there is still a plan to issue out an RFP for the PPP, correct? Or
Yes.
is it still in consideration?
Yeah, not only for the 20 megawatt, but the others at IRP that GHD presented to be able to meet the goal by 2030.
Okay,
We have to proceed with that now
Okay.
and not wait, a year or 2 years.
okay.
So we'll go ahead and release it
Do you-
for Saipan, Tinian, and Rota.
Okay. Is there a timeline for when the RFP will go out for the PPP?
We are hoping that we'll be able to put it out within the next 60 to 90 days.
Okay, great. All
We're
right.
still developing it, and we're getting NREL's input. And then we have to take it to CPUC for their approval to
Okay.
advertise it.
Okay, thank you for that update. And just last question with regards to the PPP. So with the solar design plan that's coming up to CUC soon, would that create any issues when the RFP goes out for the PPP? What I mean by that is whether the bidders will be bound to use the plan that was prepared for CUC, or is CUC amenable to allow the bidders to create their own plans?
Yes, we will allow bidders to devise a plan or do their own plan.
Okay.
Some of that even.
Sir, can you turn on the mic?
Oh,
I turned it off. Yeah, we will allow them to change. A lot of this will benefit them because a lot of the permitting will already be done, and the acquisition of the land for designation for use of a solar farm will already be in place.
okay.
So hopefully that will, encourage the bidders and help expedite all the process.
Okay. And I see that the plan is quite costly. It's a little bit over $500,000, about 645,000, right? So it's quite a lot of money. And I was just wondering whether or not in the RFP would somewhat um, use maybe some of the plans that CUC has already spent on, or
Yes, that is giving them the foundation to
Okay.
build on.
okay. So it wouldn't be a complete waste then. in
It's
other
not a
words.
complete
Okay.
waste.
I just want to make
And
sure.
it
that-
is also 100% funded by a grant.
okay.
And so we move forward expeditiously so we wouldn't lose that money.
Okay. Great. Thank you. I said I only had one last one, but something just caught my eye. If we go to which page was that? Oh, okay. Sorry. Page 3 of the slide. So it gives us a breakdown of Saipan, Tinian, and Rotor power generation's current status, and it's just a clarifying question. So the D-rated generation capacity is 33.8, and the temporary generation that Agreco is providing is at 12, which gives you a available generation capacity of 45.8. At peak demands is 41.5. That really doesn't leave us a lot of room for any emergency. So I was wondering, does CUC have a contingency plan on, if something should ever happen and the generator goes down, especially with only having that capacity, like what happens?
We are in the process of overhauling, and once we're going out for bid for the 12 megawatt to replace the
Oh, okay.
soon to expire Agreco, and we will be able to bring one of the units off that's way past due for maintenance, so we can do some maintenance.
Okay.
But as we stated earlier, we are in a critical state here, and you may know that we tried to purchase 2 engines earlier in the year, and protests delayed it, which would have delayed it for
Sure.
years. So now we have to, we are going out for the IFB and
Okay.
hopefully help expedite the process of getting some new diesel generators.
Okay, great. And speaking of Agreco, I know that their contract expires in May based on your presentation earlier. So was there an RFP or IFP that has already gone out to ensure that?
It should be going out today or
So-
tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. That's all I have. Thank
Okay.
you. I yield, Chair.
This is must see Senator Magufnia. Senator Cabo, do you want to pose your questions to Mr. Watson this time? Or you want me? I can. Okay, let me ask a couple of questions. Thank you, Vice. I'm gonna skim through your pages because I got a few questions, perhaps. But just as far as can you explain more in detail as far as, let's say, for example, the renewable energy? Well, for the purpose of the general public, what is renewable and what is alternative? The definition of, are they both of the same or one and the same, or?
Yeah, the renewable is, the method of renewal that we are looking at is the solar power and an IPP, public-private partnership. The alternative that we refer to is with the diesel engines. Instead of privatizing the diesel power plants, the alternative will be to pursue and obtain a Department of Energy line of credit through their loan processing office, and keep the control and operation under CUC instead of privatizing.
Okay. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. And maybe I can. This next question is probably going to be directed to Ms. Ogumoro. Earlier you mentioned, or Mr. Watson mentioned that you are the what do you you're the point person for renewable and alternative energy, correct?
Senator, my name is Ivana Gomero, and yes, indeed, I'm a renewable energy engineer. And my counterpart is Mr. Adrian Regis. He's also a renewable energy engineer, but he's on training right now in Guam for modeling our power system with along with two other engineers. So I'm a team of two under CUC for the renewable energy engineer system.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. I mean, your clarification. But can you get into the detail of the integration of, let's say, for example, we're at 2029 or 2030. Can you get into the details of the integration of the solar, the choice of the all green light solar? How is this going to factor? I mean, maybe in your best way to explain, how would this pan out in terms of integrating or alternative into the 60% current power generation that we deploy, in terms of the rates, in terms of the grid, in terms of, how is this going to factor out? How are we doing it? How's it going to go? What's the phase like? I mean, am I jumping ahead of the IRP, or is this
So just to clarify, Senator, your question is how by 2029, 2030, what does it look like for the CNMI and in terms of renewable penetration into our current system? Okay, so if I make it take a stab at it, Director. So our goal by 2030, with which we presented, is to get to at least 40% renewable penetration for all systems, Saipantin and Rhoda. So there are going to be stages of implementation based on the integrated resource plan, which GHD Andre Tenor had presented. The initial stages and recommendations for what we need to do in order to get ready for that integration for all three islands. So currently we are in the preliminary stages. We're in the design, we're acquiring property, working with DPL and our stakeholders to identify these properties to kind of help us with reducing the possible impact to the cost of energy, because the goal, of course, is to reduce it, but we don't know yet how it's going to impact our rates. That's why we have enlisted with economist.com to look into our cost of service study for not just power, but also water and wastewater. So we're still in the implementation, they would say pre-feasibility phase. So as we work towards identifying where our shortfalls are with our grid, because it takes a lot of technology and integration of communications to understand where our shortfalls are. Currently, if there's an outage, it's all done manually. Our plants are of course, they're over 50 to 60 years old. They're all done. Everything is ran manually. So it does take time. So there are improvements needed through SCADA systems installed in order for us to react. And these renewable energy systems require fast reaction so that we can identify the issue out in the field and respond accordingly. So right now we're proposing plants in the south for Saipan, kind of centralized for Tinian. Rhoda is more in the Song, it's far away from the Song. It's in the San Paulo area. So we need to start that communication between our field, our distribution system, and our power plant in order for us to react accordingly. Because with these systems, we're talking about seconds. And we want to be able to upgrade our existing plants, because the generators we have, in order to retrofit it, it's going to cost more money. So it makes more sense to purchase new units that are more fuel efficient and meet our current code to help reduce our greenhouse gases. So there's different stages. We are in the pre-feasibility stage. We're moving towards the implementation. Director Simon Sanchez has mentioned we need the assistance of this body to help us with identifying those properties so we can enter into the RFP stage for generation for our power plants. And then RFPs for renewable, which is, creating energy from renewable sources such as we have sunlight here. And that is sunlight that's free, but however, to produce that energy, it costs money. Going back to the pre-feasibility stage, we need the assistance of this body to help with identifying the properties, acquiring those properties, and moving into the implementation phase of going out for those RFPs to hire a third-party contractor, basically, to produce the energy from collecting from the sun and then connecting it to our distribution system so that we, CUC, can purchase the power to serve the grid, which would then serve our customers.
Yeah, you're the second person that mentioned about property. Maybe we should call Secretary Santos here, public lands to be in this meeting as well. But we'll consider that next. Just a brief history. In my earlier years in the Senate, we almost had the same issue, and it's amazing that back in mid 2000s, we're still dealing with a power crisis. And I remember the time, the governor at the time put aside the board to, sort of like a directive to kind of get to the next step. And along that line, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, guys, because I did pull the trigger on it. And one of the professionals and experts that came through my doors, whether on Tinian or here on Saipan, is a company that produces and observes and have offices in the U.S. that produce the nuclear battery. And I'm surprised that the IRP is not even considered as an option. Is there a reason why we didn't explore that option? I mean, it's the cleanest. Is that too hot topic to discuss openly, or, I mean, nuclear battery, nuclear energy is not new, and it's more than likely it requires a lot of technical expertise and way above what we know here. But I'm just surprised that it's not even put in the slide.
So your question is why, or have we considered
Yes.
like micronuclear?
Yes.
Okay, I have spoken to the vendors and have lined up with the Department of Energy experts to meet with us, considering the technology for a micro nuclear. They have units as low as 3 megawatt. When I spoke to them, they did indicate that there's a high risk in a high seismic active area, which I know I've felt more earthquakes here than I did in California. So I think this is a highly active seismic area. But we are going to entertain with the Department of Energy, their experts. And if those risks can be overcome, the other challenge we would have is for a change in the Constitution that doesn't allow nuclear energy, I believe,
It's just
in
the law.
CNMI.
It's you can actually change it, because I introduced the law, and when I left for vacate or a trip, the Senate at the time shelved it, and I wasn't around to justify it. So it's just a brief history. But anyway, so I'm just curious because Japan is, it's a bigger nation and more output, more people. So also mentioned California. Do they have any nuclear power plant over there? I mean, small kind.
They do have a nuclear power plant, in different areas, not just California, but different states, and some of the micro nuclear plants are coming online, and they even have some water cooled traditional nuclear plants. coming online, especially in areas where they have data centers that is growing and taking a tremendous amount of power. And they talk about not just megawatts, but gigabyte or gigawatts. So,
And that's the reason why, and I'm glad you kind of walked me into that, because if we are going to focus on data centers, which I'm hearing that there are some coming down our islands here, they would require additional. And who's to say that it's going to stop with one? Could be more, and then they're going to require more juice. I mean, megawatts. So, I'm just asking. It's not. I don't have any plans. I'm just curious that it's not even in the IRP or even being considered. To the point where you're going to work with the legislature to address legislations to progress forward with other matters. So I'm going to leave it at that. But,
okay.
please know that that's something that I personally introduced that legislation to explore that option. So whatever it is that you met with the Department of who you're meeting,
Department of Energy.
yeah, please discuss that and be interested to hear what they say as far as this site, because I have a strong belief that the CNMI is going to be expanding on other spectrum, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Like my big footprint on Tinian, being where I'm from, they're not going to reduce and up and go. They're going to grow. So the more that we have for CUC to generate the funds, the better for us
Right.
here. So yeah, I'm going to ask one more, and then I'll yield to. I see my good colleague Senator Castro that walked in. I know he has a lot. He's on his phone. He's cranking up his questions. But I do. I'm gonna go back to my question earlier, and I think Senator Sanchez tried to explain it in briefly. But Ms. Ogomoro, can you again? I'm gonna use ROTA because your feasibility study kind of indicates 1.2, no, 2.1 megawatt on high by the IRP, something like that for the next 10 years. Anyhow, so in the case of our people there, is it part of the CUC plan to just have them 100% renewable? And then you, of course, have a backup generator in the event the storm comes?
So to answer your question, you're referring to GHD's demand forecast, correct? So yes, it does for the high case go up to 1.9 by past 2038. And so Rhoda and Tinian, because their demand is a lot smaller, they're really what we call low-hanging fruit because we could actually get 100% a lot quicker, which GHD has finalized their model for Tinian, and we're waiting on that data because they're just finalizing that. So Tinian and Rhoda, yes, we could get to 100% with then shifting our generation for diesel to more of the backup generation. So we would experience a shift in how we currently operate, where our main diesel plants will then be operating at night should the batteries not be able to supply sufficient energy at night.
So in short, the answer is yes.
Yes.
That's in the plan.
That is in the plan, yes.
Okay. I think we need to highlight that so that our people or ratepayers can understand, the feasibility and this IRP document that's presented this morning. I'm gonna yield my time for now because Senator Calvo here is ready to ask this question, and I'll come back again. Thank you, Vice. Recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Yvonne, and members. Welcome back. I was just looking at the initiation by the chair in regards to, that's what we'll look forward to. I mean, if we can use the outer islands as a pilot project, for renewable. That would be a feasible, outlook in regards to setting it up for success, and then, for the state as well. I was looking at also the solar versus the battery BESS here. Are we looking at both in option? I mean, both together, solar PVs and in combination, so that Senator Sanchez mentioned that's implemented on Guam. Okay, just taking a look at that, because I know we have two. I know the cost too is going to be, I don't know. I was looking at the generators because we're in hot waters, how you're mentioning in regards to the current situation with the diesel powered generators and the 490, how much million, if that's correct, right, on the replacement, and knowing that, and knowing the cost of just the startup or implementation of the renewable energy model, just how we're gonna fit that in. I'm pretty sure you guys have that planned out. A lot of the consumers are just, inquiring on when are the rates, the inflation, what do you call it? The rates going to reduce. So, that's one of the concerns that our public is really asking. Other than that, do we have any other members, Senate members, or any other questions, inquiries? Okay, so what we'll go ahead and do, I know our chair's not in, so maybe what we'll go ahead and do is we'll move on. Did he mention that we're going to move on to the debt agreement between CUC and Commonwealth, or we're going to table that? We're going to table that? Okay. Yes. So we're going to, do you have, Chair, any further questions or members? Senator Manny? Thank you.
So I just also wanted to find out, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but is the water supply in Rhoda, and this is going to lead to a question related to electricity, but the water supply in Rhoda, is it gravity flow? Yes or no?
That's correct. The main water supply is gravity from the cave.
Okay. And so I'm just curious, has CUC looked into in-pipe hydroelectric, like micro hydroelectric technology? So
Yes,
that,
we have looked at that,
okay.
and that was one of my questions as well for GHD. I think the challenge is that there's so many miles
Yeah.
from the grid that would really drive up the cost, and then you have to have the volume of water going through. So we have the pressure. We have over 250 psi. We're at the bottom where we chlorinate. So the pressure's there, but the volume to drive a generating unit will be limited. So we have a solar power for our chlorination system now with an inverter powering the chlorination pump, and we are still looking at possibility of putting an inline generator to power that in case as a backup to the solar.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that at least we're looking at other forms, and just like technology, as the years go by, they get cheaper and more reliable. So thank you for your visionary thinking. Thanks.
Senator, you're good? Thank you, Senator Castro. And Senator Corina, do you have one? Any? Okay, you can. So I want to ask the team CUC to go to page 9, please, of your presentation. And on, can you just elaborate more on bullet point 2? Update of the CUC net billing metering policies. What are we updating here?
Yes, what we're updating there is we've hired economist.com to study our net metering policy, and as following industry standards, they now call it more as a net metering billing policy or net billing instead of net metering, and looking at fair and equitable ways for the net metering policy to help all customers and not just the customers that have the solar on the roof, and also to look at equitable ways where the grid is paid for. So right now there's most places in the U.S. and throughout the Pacific Islands, and their net metering, they're implementing a flat rate to be hooked up to the grid. Even if they, people might think, okay, I have solar, now I'm off the grid. However, they are still hooked to the grid, even though they may not be using that power. To be fair and equitable, they need to have a flat rate to be charged for, just like an insurance policy. You hope that you don't crash your car and have to use that insurance. But with this, it would be like an insurance policy with a small amount that when it does get cloudy and they're not producing enough power, or their batteries go, the batteries don't last forever on the solar system. And when they are depleted, they're going to need power from the grid. So like a standby, and water already has that fee, but power does not have it, at least not here in CNMI. In other places that exist, where I live or my home in California, I have a flat rate in addition to the consumption rate. And that will help make it more equitable across the board. And then the rates can be brought down comparable. So they are looking at this, the net metering, at the same time as the cost of service study and rate analysis.
Okay, and when are we going to get the first public information with regards to
that? Within the next 30 to 60 days. They're already 60 days into it, and the scope of work stated that they would be to have their recommendation within 90 days from notice to proceed. So we are approaching that.
Sounds good. So sticking with the same page, you kind of, yeah. On the, you mentioned earlier about, you said DOD.
Yeah, Department of Defense.
Okay. Is that by way of OLDCC or is it directly to DOD?
Directly from DOD. They provided a grant to the CNMI central government to do a master plan. And that master plan is for power, water, wastewater, and telecommunication.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier that it's already out announcement?
It is. They will be ranking it and evaluating the bids. The first week of March is tentatively scheduled. They're formulating the ranking panel now.
Okay. So let me ask this. I'm gonna head over to the fuel situation. Like with a, you have only one vendor, right? From importing for CUC.
We have one vendor now, one contract. However, it's coming up for bid again. And I'd ask John to speak on that.
Can I just ask Mr.
Yeah.
Watson? So let's say, for example, and I'm not sure if it's still the same policy that the contractor or the provider does, but like they sell the product to you, to CUC at this rate, and then once it's in the tank for X amount of time, what's the holding capacity as far as your supply here, and then you need to reorder. What's the when you need? Let's say, for example, you have I'll use really simple numbers like 100 gallons, right? You order 100 gallons every month, or what's the holding capacity here right now with CUC to make sure that you have power? I mean, you have fuel so that if a storm comes or something happens, you still can generate the power.
I believe we have a 17-day supply, but let me get John to answer that in more detail.
Okay.
You want to come up?
Okay, siya, mano naman gini, so we're recording this thing, so. And once you press the button and it's red, you can just remove your hand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe Mr. Watson's right. We do have ample supply for approximately more than half a month of fuel for when the times come for storms or backup, and when the delivery from mobile does not come in on time. I think Mr. Richard would be the best person to give you that information.
Mr. Cano?
Yeah, Mr. Cano.
Yeah, Mr. Cano,
Yeah.
please join us. Join us in the chamber.
I tried my best to answer the.
It's fine. You can take that other seat over there, the hot seat on the right, all the way there. And when you press and it's red, you're hot. So the question is how much reserve you have, for that matter, in your tank. And I'm talking, I think they were referencing sa IPAN, but if you can also cover Tinian and Luta.
Currently, our peak demand as of January is 35 megawatt.
No, I mean talking about the fuel
Oh,
supply.
okay. The fuel, can I see?
So I was asking Mr. Cano, right?
Yes, sir.
What is our like the SOP for ordering fuel, and how much fuel reserve do we have on islands in the event like the ship doesn't come on time? How many days do we have to make sure that our the general public remains powered up? How many gallons reserve?
Okay, as of yesterday, our capacity, let's see.
And anyone can jump in.
Yeah, I got it.
wish
Okay,
to.
just give me time.
I got it pulled up here, 571,334 gallons.
So that's your holding capacity for
That
17?
was what was available Wednesday, the 19th.
Okay, so say for example you bought that for. Okay, so is that constant, like in terms of pricing, like when you purchase it?
We have a contract that could be variable, just like the gasoline at the pumps is variable.
So
It could change.
So it does affect that. Like, so the
Yes.
next shipment coming over still in somewhere in the Philippine Sea, if the market change, then it's going to affect the one in the tank on island.
Yes. Yeah, and there's the mobile has a tank farm that has a larger capacity that they keep on hand for not only for our use, but the entire their customers throughout the island.
So you're affected too. CUC is affected with that.
Do what?
Is it affected? So based on what you just said, how does that represent what you have in the tank in your property already? I guess the leading question is how is it translates to the
They
FAC rates,
the FAC
because that's fuel adjustment charges,
Right,
right?
fuel
So
adjustment
that's why
charge.
that's
The-
that's what I'm trying to get to.
yeah, what we have in our tanks doesn't affect the FAC. It's the price that we're charged for the fuel
So it's you
on a monthly
okay.
basis.
So can you repeat that again so that we can understand?
Yes, the FAC will be based on the charge that CUC is charged by mobile and through the I can't think of the terminology, but it's MOP, yeah, which means what? What? Yeah, come up.
Mr. Cano, I think has the answer. Go ahead.
Do you have it?
No, I'm just correcting
No, that's fine.
information that Director Kevin was mentioning. We have about almost 1 million gallon of fuel from
In reserve.
reserve. Right now, it can one tank can go up to 9 days, and the other tank can go up to about 8 days.
So 17 days.
Yes.
So that's actually what I'm trying to get to is
Yeah.
how many days reserve do we have? Okay, so I think thank you, Dave. Means of Platts Singapore MOPS. So can
Yes.
you monthly pricing? Okay, so this is the mechanism that you utilize, you adopt it as board, or is this in the contract?
That's not part of the contract. The MOPS is the figure that we used for the fuel adjustment charge as one of the parts of that charge.
So it's not a representation of the already purchased in Mr. Cano's tank right now, correct? It's the
Correct.
one that's coming from the Philippine Sea. That's the one
Because-
that affects that.
Yeah, because we have deliveries throughout the month of fuel.
Yeah, I'm sure the reason why I keep digging on this question because I want the general public to understand what's the representation of why is it that today is this and tomorrow is that. So the MOPS and I think we're gonna continue hearing this from you guys until such time that it's understood and it's lower, I guess, because where everybody is heading to is when is we're going to realize a lower FAC or when is it going to go back down to a respectable level, and I think Senator Simon Sanchez kind of alluded to earlier, trying to explain the migration of renewable, so that would help lower the cost. So I'm going to yield and I'm going to recognize Senator Kawu because he keeps poking me on the side. He wants to ask further on that. So, Chair, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I just wanted to piggyback on Chairman here. If we can go, Mr. Watson, you mentioned if I can go back to the net meter, which he mentioned up here, update of CUC net billing meter policies. We do have the water rates at a fixed rate. May I ask what are the rates for, let's say if someone, your regular, what do you call it, consumer You have your residential, your commercial, and your business. But a residential, for example, what would the fixed rate for water, if they have their water tank and they just want to, they're most likely rain attachment. What's that rate at? Do you guys happen to, if it's a fixed rate, do you guys know that? Monthly?
So that depends on the meter size, but on average, like a 3/4 inch meter
Yeah.
will be $7.
Oh,
1086.
1086. Yeah, just for the public awareness. Now we're going to move to the water portion because that just ties into, the power portion. So the power net meter, as you stated earlier, we're still looking into, because we do have, modeled homes that do have there's PV solars in place. Solar PVs in place. But what's the percentage of the 100%? Do you have a policy requirement on how much CUC is expected to? Is there, like, if I'm, a breakdown as far as how much consumption they have to pay CUC, as far as, let's say they utilize their power source and then they turn it off, and then CUC, do they get a credit or a debit to that for a consumer if they have their solar units used? Meaning, for example, you have a solar panel in place at a household and they're off the grid. But then is there a policy in place that requires, okay, they must stay on the grid, or they can completely disconnect from your power unit if they choose so?
I believe they all have the, right or to be able to go off the grid completely. But if they choose that, they're, I don't know of any house or any solar system that on a residential that will provide them 100% all the time off the grid, because they're taking a gamble when if it's cloudy for weeks at a time, or even at night, if they don't have a substantial battery storage, they're not going to be able to have power at night. Or if their battery needs to be replaced after 5 to 10 years, then they still need to be hooked to the grid and not 100% totally off the grid.
Okay. Is there like a 70-30 or a 60-40 according to CUC that they, like a percentage they must be on the grid?
I don't
Or like a certain percent?
I
or
don't
no?
believe that there's a requirement to be how much percentage on the grid.
Okay.
Can you? I'm gonna let Yvonne answer it.
Okay, so if you are a net metering customer,
Mhm.
that means you have a power meter. Therefore, you are approved by CUC. And in the agreement, you can go no more than 70% of your average usage from the previous year. So if you are, we're talking about an existing customer, correct? So this is existing customer, they have their own solar panels, they're connected to CUC. If I'm understanding, you're asking, is there a requirement? Yes, there is a requirement if you're part of that program, and it's been, I think there's a cap on that right now, but that per that agreement, it's no more than 70% of what your average usage was at the time you applied. So it's like a previous usage of a year. You submit all your application, and then it's an agreement between CUC and the customer that you are not to go over 70% of your previous usage based on the calculations provided.
Thank you so much. That was just pertaining for public information, so we know.
Thank you, Senator Calvo. Recognize Senator Castro.
So let's say the customer has a unit and it's just, let's say one bedroom was powered by solar and it's not like the breaker is off. How would CUC know that the consumption in that case?
Can you just clarify one more time the question? So you have a household and you have at least one room.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So the question earlier was off the grid, but let's say this person is on the grid and they have one, like maybe 4 panels, but it's not even like the breaker for that panel is off and it's just going straight to like a portion, right? How would we, so just to give you an example, like with my house, I have a solar AC unit, right? Normally, I've been saving power by not turning on the AC during the day because I'm at work. But since I have a solar AC unit, I just leave it on during the day so the house remains cool. But how would CUC know if the breaker's off? Yeah, so
Yeah,
okay,
so
okay.
we wouldn't be capturing that because we probably not in our system, right? So
Yeah.
normally we do an audit of all of the net metering customers. So I guess we're getting confused on the term net metering. Net metering means you have an agreement with CUC, and therefore the net metering part is the billing component, so that you receive the credits. So in your case, it's isolated. So with CUC wouldn't know because you don't have a net meter or part of the agreement. So yeah, so we wouldn't be able to know.
And just to say, I like all the answers, and I believe that that's how it should be. Like, if I'm a private citizen and I want to go 100% off the grid, and I have the money to invest and go off the grid, the government shouldn't tell me I cannot do that on my property. So thank you for for being on the same stance. Thanks. But for reliability, I also like your yes, I want to be on the grid too.
Good.
Thank you, accounting side.
Thank you, Senator Castro. How much are we? I think you guys reported this already, but just in case, how much are we peaking right now with the fuel purchase every year to run your powers in figures?
Can you repeat that question? And then I'll
How
see
many-
who
how
can
many-
best answer it.
How much money are we using to pay for our fuel for the year?
That figure is 75 million, approximately 75 million.
Okay, so that includes the lube and everything else, and just the fuel.
Yes, combined.
So 75 million. So our objective with the RFP is to lower that cost, correct?
Correct.
So how do you say, for example, 2030 is today? How much are we going to remove of that? In a perfect society, in a perfect scenario with the plan.
In a perfect, if we got 40%, penetration, then it should lower the fuel consumption by 40%. But to achieve that, we'd have to get new, smaller generators to carry that load when we don't, at night. And because, when I visited in Hawaii, their power plant and solar facilities, they indicated, even though they had, approaching 100% solar, they still had to run their large generator.
There's still that
which
portion of
Still, yes,
yeah.
because it takes so long to power up when they lose the solar at night that they have to keep it running 24/7. So, and at a lower RPM, which in turn created a higher maintenance cost than they would have incurred prior to the solar. So they said it's a misconception that just because they have solar that the rates are going to come down. And I've heard that throughout the nation at the APPA conferences, that just because you get solar isn't a magic silver bullet that to expect the rates to come down. And they emphasize that the sooner we let the public know that, the better.
So you just said that, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying that it doesn't necessarily represents a lower rate. Is that what you're saying?
Do what?
Is that what you're saying? What you just said is it doesn't necessarily reflect a lower rates, even if you
Yes.
put in alternative.
Correctly, correct. What it will help us if we can reduce that FAC charge.
Yeah. That's
That's
the
which is
almighty
part of
FAC.
the rate. Yes.
Yeah. So I think
And that's our ultimate goal.
Yeah. And I don't mean to. I'm making it lighthearted because although it's a serious matter, but it's really the A and the Z part of the questions for our people out there. And I keep grilling and asking the IRP and what your take on these things, because I think the people need to have confidence that the utilities company or the corporation is hard at doing and providing a cheaper cost. So what do we do? Say, for example, an agency, the likes of the health department or a bigger agency, PSS for that matter, become off the grid 100%, and they have their own backup generator, diesel engine. What do we do? I mean, how are we going to tackle that in terms of the ratepayers that are remaining in the grid? Can you just explain?
Yeah, I can speak on that some. That, definitely that a loss of revenue. And when you lose a large customer, then it has to be absorbed by your smaller customers. And that a cost of service analysis and a rate analysis will bring that to bear. And then that's why you do it. The best practice is to do rate analysis every 2 to 5 years, so that right now we haven't done a rate analysis since 2014. So we're 10 years into it.
Thank you for that. Do you? I mean, it's more on a national level, politics and stuff. And I know that the new administration is always saying that we need to buy America first. And I don't want to say it on record, but yeah, the Trump administration is saying about being self-reliant on our own fuel supply instead of going off. To what extent that's going to affect the CNMI, I don't know. It remains to be seen. But at your level, and I'm sure your network with other island nations that often meet, is that something that you guys are looking into as far as that's concerned?
Can you repeat that question?
Let's say, for example, President Trump is always saying we need to produce our own oil and fuel and all, right? So it is our hope that when we do that, it's going to produce cheaper fuel for the mass. Whether or not that's going to affect us in the positive side, or it's going to be status quo going west. Do you have any information as far you want to share with this committee and the people?
I think that what happens in the U.S. if they produce more, as Trump intends to happen, that will not only affect the prices in the U.S. stateside, but it will affect the world market. So we could see a decrease prices throughout the world because if they produce more that meets the demand in the US and even export, then the just supply and demand is going to drive the price down.
Right. And the reason why I asked that, Mr. Watson, is I used this analogy once in a distinguished visitor here because of the nature of the geopolitical climate right now. It's almost appears like we're damn if we do, damn if we don't. You know, it affects our one of the longest staple industry, the tourism industry. We're still trying to figure out how to get some of the tourists back. And when it's really costly to be here to do business, we get closures, and so that's why we're battling with these things. And to what extent that the transition from whatever footprints that we're getting from the military, how is going to translate to the local economy here, how fast it does to ease the cost, I don't know. It remains to be seen. So that's why this conversation is very important, because I look at the CNMI as like a big what do you call that? What do you call those ships out there with all the warplanes and all that? Those ships. No, so it's the end of the day, guys. And I'm sorry that I'm a morning person. So, aircraft carrier, okay. And while our biggest customer really is, we're very patriotic DoD, so they require a lot of elements coming this way. So have you ever thought about rubbing elbows with them and say, hey, can we ride on some of your fuel purchase to subsidize some of our fuel situation here? No, this is true, because everything is driven. Everything that we do here is driven by the cost of fuel. I'm living on Tinian. Every time we go down and they say, hey, why is the cost? I mean, the retail on this. Oh, because they raise the electric, or they raise the fuel. So we need to match. But when your FAC goes down, or the fuel goes down, the price remains the same because they're trying to recover. So you see what I'm saying? So if the people don't buy, and what earlier was said by a constituent, is when you're trying to choose between paying your power bill and going to the doctor to buy, or to the pharmacy to buy your maintenance medication, something has to give, So I'm trying to get to the point where we need to look at things from the 30,000 view, because the fuel is the driving force for everything that we do, especially for island nations like us. And without us trying to regulate to make it cost effective, or even affordable, we're going to continue seeing our people have to resort to paying higher rates. We're going to continue, and when I say people, it includes the retailers. Some of them are transposing a few of them are losing money as we speak. And God forbid if they're going to close down, I don't want to see that. But, the biggest thing that we always have to keep in mind is, if it's really costly to live in the CNMI, we can't control anybody to leave. And once they go, in the next 5 years, they don't come back, they'll never come back. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, or we're working with. So that's the reason why I asked that. And you go to the national or NREL, or when you associate yourself with, you meet with other experts globally, nationwide. And we're going to do our part, but I toss that out because it's really not a bad idea to source out how can they help us here. I don't want to devalue our significance in the world peace right now, because as small as we are in the globe, we play a big role. I don't know if that's a question or that's a comment, but do you want to say something?
Yeah, and I think that is why Department of Defense was here earlier and gave the CNMI, central government, the $4+ million to do the master plan. And their comment was that this master plan will help bring to light other improvements that are needed and that they will be able to fund. They, came to us and say, where do you need improvements and what is needed now? And our statement was, we need a master plan. So it can help us with a roadmap going forward. And that in turn will help them determine how else they can help CNMI.
Thank you, Director. And is there any other member? We're nearing the time to recess. So, is there any other question? Go ahead, Senator Castro.
Just wanted to find out which item are we on the agenda?
Number 2.
Number 2. Okay. I'll wait till number 3.
Okay, so with that, any other questions? Because we're approaching, I have a 3 p.m. So, but any other member before I ask for a recess? I think we're good. Director, Chair, and all the folks that are here, thank you so much for being here today and for your presentation. We appreciate your presence today, and more so the general public that are able to watch this on TV. And I continue to ask for your patience, and also we continue to try and ask for that we work together, whether legislatively and not, and we're all in this together. I would like to think that you agree with me. We want to make sure that we produce a stable power, but at the same time, it's affordable. And I do want to mention that as discussed with Madam Chair Tenorio, that we are going to recess until February 26th at 9:30, of which we're gonna wrap up on items 3, 4, and 5. I asked for a 9:30 on February 25th, 26th, because we want to make sure that we try and cover as much during that day. So again, we're going to focus on power generation, power distribution only, and that's the reason why we condensed that meeting and focus on that only for this particular call. So with that, we stand to recess at 2:40 p.m. On February 20, and we will be resuming back on February 26th at 9:30 a.m., which I respectfully ask for you guys to come back here again. All right. So thank you very much, and we
Thank you.
stand to recess.